Good afternoon, Steve, and thank you for joining us for this video interview. Would you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, Steve Towers. I'm CEO and co-founder of the BP Group. We're a not-for-profit global community. We're about 50,000 members now, and we're in our 18th anniversary this year. The point of the BP Group is to exchange next practice around process management, and especially outside in.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. What is this outside in about?
Okay, I suppose if we put it in a nutshell, outside in is a different category and way of doing business which has really emerged in the last 10 or 12 years, and it involves changing our perspective on the way business is done. Traditionally, as many of us know, we've inherited an industrial age model of doing business. We have functional specialist silos organised by a subdivision of labour. And outside in suggests that by shifting our perspective, and instead of thinking of our businesses almost as factories all the time, we actually put the customer at the centre of everything we do. Hence the expression outside in. We look at the business through the customer's eyes.
Okay, that sounds very interesting from the perspective of the customer. Is there some kind of practical method available to actually do this in life?
Yeah, I mean, outside in is as much a philosophy as it is a practice, and many organisations who've adopted that shift in perspective will have different names for the methodologies. Within the approach that we advocate, we talk about the Customer Expectation Management Method, CEM method for short, and that's the best practice from some of the world's leading companies in terms of how do you make this shift from industrial information age to that outside-in perspective. And it's a structured approach which takes people very quickly through a set of stages in identifying very clearly who is the customer, what is the successful customer outcome, and how do we then align what we do to actually achieving that successful outcome.
And what do these organizations that start applying, for example, same method, gain from it?
Okay, I think in the first instance we talk about it's a direct benefit. For many of us who've been involved in process for a long time, we would talk about improvements in efficiency, effectiveness, productivity, throughput, turnaround time, things like that. When we're talking about outside in, the measures of process success are actually what we refer to as the Triple Crown. And the Triple Crown has three aspects to it. One is the ability to simultaneously grow revenues, decrease costs, and enhance service. Now previously, within that sort of industrial age model, those things were thought to be, if you try to reduce cost, you by necessity badly impact service. Whereas when we're going outside in, we use those as measurements of the success of the process. And so process links directly with those things. And of course, as we all know, they're the things why our organisations exist, is to provide a good service, is to grow our own internal revenue so that we can generate profit for our shareholders, or if we're in the public sector, for instance, to be able to provide a very good service at the lowest possible levels of taxation and income, and then at the same time not only control our costs but drive out costs from the point of view of things which aren't directly aligned with customer success may not be necessary. It's just that we might have always thought they were necessary because we always did work that way. So what outside-in approaches, and particularly the CM method does, is allow us to focus very quickly on those things, and within a matter of hours and days be able to identify an implementable action plan, not an action plan that takes 6 or 12 months, but something that can be implemented within sort of weeks and days rather than months and years.
Okay. What is the difference then between this same method and outside-in thinking if we think about all the process improvement methods that there are available? There are quite many.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. If we went and sort of Googled how many different process methods and approaches there were, we'd find dozens, if not hundreds. I think with outside in, we can easily distill the difference insofar as the previous methods talked and viewed the organisation almost as if everything's a factory. So we're organised into functional specialist silos. And it was Adam Smith back in 1776 wrote a book, The Wealth of Nations, and he described the phenomenon of subdivision of labour. And that's largely underpinned the way we've developed businesses on a global scale ever since. It's just that in the 21st century we find ourselves in a completely different place, We find ourselves with customers who are very choosy, rebellious, promiscuous in their choice of product and service. They vote with their feet if they have a poor experience. They want the very best at the lowest cost. So all those dynamics mean that shift of just looking at processes from a production mindset, if you like, isn't sufficient anymore. Not that that's bad, it just doesn't go far enough. What outside in is give you that ability to actually reframe process in such a way that you directly connect every single task and activity that we do with the successful customer outcome.
I understand. Do you have some kind of example of organization that has been using this approach and been successful in it?
Okay, on a global scale, and we talk a lot about these organisations in the book, but if I think about particular sectors, and a very dynamic sector, say retail fashion, and one of the world's leaders in this space now is a company called Zara from Spain. And they made a decision a decade or so ago to shift their focus away from let's just look at our supply chain and production management processes to actually figuring out indeed what is the successful customer outcome, and then accordingly aligning themselves to do that. And the type of shift that you can do is that traditional retail fashion would have a cycle time of, say, 12 to 14 months from concept of a new item of clothing to actually getting it in the store. When we contrast that with Zara's same process, in other words, concept to getting an item in the store that you and I might buy, is now 8 to 10 days. And that's an order of magnitude difference. Now, how on earth can there be such a difference? Well, so much of what we're doing traditionally is no longer required when we look through the lens of the successful customer outcome. We can very much remove, we refer to it as dumb stuff, but it doesn't feel like dumb stuff when you're doing it inside the traditional organisation because you're being measured on efficiency and effectiveness. But in terms of alignment to the successful customer outcome, we can remove a lot of that and have a very clear focus to the delivery. And Zara do that every day, and that's why they're the world's leading fashion retailer.
What about all those other organizations that are out there and still haven't started doing it? So what can they do to get moving on with this?
Well, the nice thing about outside in, it just doesn't apply to the business to consumer market. It applies across the whole range. If you're doing work, we call work process, and where you're doing process, you can go outside in. So it doesn't really matter whether you're charitable, public sector, private organisation, whatever it is, this works. If you haven't started, our endeavour when we sort of start working with people is to get people to really articulate very clearly who is the customer. Right? And when we say who is the customer, I don't mean what segments you've got, but very clearly who is the customer. And accordingly, once you've thought about that, you have categories of customer, or do you just have the one? And alongside that, what is the respective successful customer outcomes? And that's the first stage within the method. Subsequently, we begin to look at processes from the point of view of how do they contribute to the achievement of that SCO, the successful customer outcome. And in doing that, we have a number of tools and techniques. And in fact, we use some techniques which have been around for 30 or so years now, but applied together will give a phenomenal shift in the effectiveness of a process.
Is there some kind of interesting new things going on in this scene, conferences or events or something?
Oh yeah, it's I mean, as I mentioned, the BP Group, we've been around since 1992-93, and this year has been our 18th annual conference. We're moving that agenda forward, and we've had events, global events in Florida, in the UK in London, in Sweden, in Australia, and in Bangalore and South Africa. And it's really a celebration and a coming together of the process community. And we've gone through various stages of the community. We've done TQM, BPR, Lean, Six Sigma, you name it, business process improvement, all those different sort of things. To, in the last decade or so, be looking at enterprise BPM and outside in as the main way to help our organisations truly succeed in the 21st century. So there's different ways of accessing directly conferences. We have a whole raft of different websites that we point people at, bpgroup.org, bp2010.com. People can go and directly understand the process of the processes and what outside in is. And in fact, in the book, we talk specifically about many case studies and examples, which are very accessible and easy to understand.
Okay, thank you for sharing this with us.
Okay, pleasure. Good to be here. Thanks.
Thanks.